Did you know that the oldest Egyptian mummy is over 5,000 years old? This isn't the work of an elaborate process of embalming that we often associate with ancient Egypt. Rather, it's a product of nature's own preservation method in the arid desert environment. Our journey begins in pre-dynastic Egypt, a time before the pyramids, before the Sphinx, even before the invention of writing. The people of this era lived along the fertile Nile Valley, their lives intricately woven with the rhythms of the river and the sun. When they died, their bodies were buried in the desert sand. The hot, dry conditions naturally desiccated the bodies, preserving them in a state of mummification. The oldest mummy ever discovered from this time is known as the Ghebeline man, a naturally preserved body dating back to around 3,400 BC. He was not a pharaoh or a noble, just an ordinary man. Yet his discovery provides an invaluable glimpse into the life and death rituals of pre-dynastic Egypt. The Ghebeline man was buried in a crouched position, his body painted with a type of resin and surrounded by simple grave goods. This suggests that even at this early stage, the Egyptians had a belief in an afterlife and the need to provide for the deceased in their journey beyond. The natural mummification process was a result of the dry desert conditions, which desiccated the bodies and prevented decomposition. The hot sand quickly removed the moisture from the body, leaving behind a naturally preserved mummy. This was not a deliberate process, but rather a natural occurrence that the Egyptians would later observe and refine into a deliberate act of preservation. So, the beginnings of mummification in Egypt were not grand or complex. They were humble, born out of the natural environment and the simple belief in an afterlife. The desert preserved the body, and the people provided the spirit with the goods it needed for the afterlife. This was the humble beginning of a ritual that would evolve into a complex science and art in the centuries to come. As the millennia rolled by, so did the sophistication of mummification. We first see a real shift in mummification techniques during the Old Kingdom period, which lasted from around 2700 to 2200 BC. This era was marked by a significant leap forward in the Egyptians' understanding of preserving the human body for the afterlife. In the early days of mummification, bodies were simply buried in the desert sand, left to dehydrate naturally. However, during the Old Kingdom, Egyptians began to employ natron, a naturally occurring salt, as a dehydrating agent. Natron was plentiful in the Nile Delta and became a key ingredient in the mummification process. Bodies were covered in natron for a period of about 40 days, effectively drying out the flesh and preventing decomposition. But the Old Kingdom's innovations didn't stop at dehydration. This period also saw the first attempts at evisceration, a process in which the internal organs were removed to further inhibit decay. Initially, evisceration was a crude and somewhat brutal process. Organs were often pulled out through the nostrils or a small incision in the abdomen. But as the centuries passed, the technique became more refined and less invasive. Of course, these early mummification practices were far from perfect. Bodies were often damaged during the evisceration process, and the resulting mummies were not as well preserved as those produced in later periods. But the groundwork was being laid for the mummification techniques we associate with ancient Egypt today. It's fascinating to consider how these practices evolved over time, shaped by religious beliefs, technological advancements, and a deep-seated desire to cheat death. The Old Kingdom marked the beginning of a long journey of discovery and refinement in the quest for eternal life. It was during this period that mummification began to resemble the process we are familiar with today. But as we'll see in the next scene, the golden age of mummies was still to come, bringing with it even greater advancements in the art of preserving the dead for the afterlife. The New Kingdom period, often referred to as the Golden Age of Mummies, brought forth a revolution in mummification. This era, spanning from the 16th to the 11th century BC, saw unprecedented advancements in mummification techniques that have intrigued historians and archaeologists for centuries. During this period, the Egyptians perfected the art of mummification, transforming it from a simple preservation process into a complex ritual that reflected their profound beliefs about death and the afterlife. One of the significant advancements was the removal of organs. The heart, believed to be the seat of the soul, was often left in place, while the liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines were carefully extracted, separately mummified, and placed in dedicated jars known as canopic jars. Another key development was the use of resin-soaked linen for wrapping the body. After dehydration with natron, a type of salt, the body was wrapped in multiple layers of linen soaked in a resin. This not only helped to preserve the body, but also gave the mummy its iconic appearance. The Golden Age also saw the introduction of elaborate funerary masks and coffins. The masks, often made of gold and precious stones, were designed to honor the dead and ensure their recognition in the afterlife. The coffins, too, became increasingly ornate, often decorated with hieroglyphs and intricate designs that told stories of the deceased's life and achievements. This era also marked the height of the Book of the Dead, a guide to the afterlife filled with spells and instructions, often found within the burial chambers. This text provided the deceased with the knowledge to pass the various trials they would encounter on their journey to the afterlife. The mummies from this period are the most well-preserved and intricate, reflecting the high point of mummification techniques. They stand as silent witnesses to a time when the Egyptians went to extraordinary lengths to ensure that death was not the end, but the beginning of an eternal journey. Like all great empires, the practice of mummification in Egypt had its sunset. As we delve into the late period of ancient Egypt, we find the practice of mummification beginning to wane. This decline was not abrupt, but rather a gradual shift influenced by a combination of changing beliefs and economic factors. During this time, Egypt came under the rule of various foreign powers. The Persians, the Greeks, and eventually the Romans each left their mark on the culture and practices of the land. These foreign influences, coupled with the evolving religious beliefs of the Egyptians themselves, started to alter the perception of the afterlife. The significance of mummification, once considered a vital process for the journey of the soul, began to diminish. The economic factors were no less significant in this decline. The process of mummification was elaborate and costly. It required skilled embalmers, expensive oils, resins, and an assortment of other materials, not to mention the ornate sarcophagi and tombs. For a society grappling with political instability and economic stress, these costs became increasingly burdensome. As a result, there was a shift towards simpler and cheaper burial methods. Many opted for less elaborate forms of mummification, while others abandoned the practice altogether, choosing instead to simply wrap their deceased in linen and bury them in the desert. By the time the Roman period rolled around, the practice of mummification had become a shadow of its former self. The Romans, with their pragmatic approach to death, saw little value in the complex rituals of mummification. They preferred simple burials, often without any form of preservation. This was the final nail in the coffin, marking the end of mummification as a widespread practice in Egypt. Despite its decline, the legacy of Egyptian mummification persisted, fascinating people for centuries to come. The allure of the mummies and the secrets they held continued to captivate the imagination of scholars, historians, and enthusiasts alike, ensuring that this ancient practice would never truly be forgotten. The existence of Egyptian mummies today is a testament to the ingenious and intricate rituals of an ancient civilization. These remarkable preservations of human life encapsulate a bygone era filled with rich traditions and complex beliefs, providing us a key to unlock the mysteries of the past. Egyptian mummies continue to serve as a bridge between the ancient and modern worlds. Through the study of mummies, we've been able to unravel some of the secrets of ancient Egyptian culture. From their religious beliefs and practices to their social hierarchies, the bodies of the deceased often tell tales more vivid than any hieroglyph. The medical practices of ancient Egypt, as deciphered from the mummification process, have also been a subject of great intrigue. The ancient Egyptians were pioneers in understanding the human body, with mummification requiring intricate knowledge of anatomy. Their techniques of preservation have given modern science invaluable insights into diseases, health, and lifestyles of the past. But the legacy of Egyptian mummies extends beyond the realm of academia. They've also made their mark on popular culture. They've been the subjects of countless books and movies, captivating audiences with tales of curses and lost civilizations. From the iconic image of the bandaged, lumbering undead to the thrilling adventures in search of hidden tombs, mummies have fueled our collective imagination and fascination with ancient Egypt. In a way, Egyptian mummies are ambassadors of their own time, allowing us to glimpse into a world that has long since faded into the sands of time. They've become symbols of our desire to understand our past and our capacity to marvel at the achievements of those who came before us. From the deserts of pre-dynastic Egypt to the museums of the 21st century, the journey of Egyptian mummies is a captivating tale of evolution, cultural significance, and timeless fascination. Through them, we've not only learned about the ancient Egyptians, but also about ourselves and our enduring curiosity about the mysteries of life and death.